hosting of the Sudanese president, and we head out on the road with some of the young hopefuls in Mali's presidential election. But first, a look at Africa's economic prospects. According to a recently published report on the economic outlook across the continent, its outlook over the next year is promising, projected to grow by 4.8% in 2013 and beyond 5% in 2014. Africa is proving to be encouragingly resilient to uncertainties that have left so much of the global economy on shaky ground. It's the 21st century's great growth region, and the world's most powerful nations, like the US and China, are jostling each other to set up shop. But for whose benefit? Henri Bernard Solignac-Lecomte is from the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. He joins us now for a closer look at the economic prospects of the continent. Henri Bernard, thanks very much for coming in. Now, we're going to start off by taking a look at Tanzania. It's one of Africa's fastest-growing economies. It's signed the basis of a $10 billion agreement with China to invest in infrastructure and a new port. That'll be in Bagamoyo, the hometown of the president. That's a pretty shrewd move, but is it China opening up a new route into just Tanzania, or is the whole of East Africa going to be benefiting from this?
Well, hopefully the landlocked countries that sit behind Tanzania will benefit from having this new route to export their products and to import merchandise. That's DRC, of course, that's Uganda, and that's Rwanda, Burundi. So all these countries who don't have an access to the sea will certainly be looking forward to this new route being open.
Okay, now it's not just China who's ploughing money into Africa. On his recent trip to the continent, US President Barack Obama pledged billions of dollars in boosting access to electricity across the continent. What does this say about the change in the perception of Africa as having more to offer to investors than just the exploitation and removal of its natural resources?
Well, the first change occurred like a decade ago. Suddenly, we realized that Africa was no longer only a destination for aid, for official development assistance, but it was a destination for investment, for people who knew they were going to make money on the continent. So that's the first important change. And the second change that was now waiting to happen is whether the exploitation of these commodities, of minerals, of energy sources, of agriculture, will be more than just exporting raw materials unprocessed, but will actually create value and job on African soil. That's the real challenge for current public policies by African governments. That's the real challenge for what people are waiting for, which is a new kind of industrial policies to take place in Africa.
Now, all this growth, it's great, but it's completely unmatched by investment in making sure those beyond Africa's elite get a slice of the economic reward. Will this ever be a priority for the kind of big business that's looking towards Africa to boost their own revenue?
Business is here to make business. I think it's very much a challenge for societies and their governments to really make sure that the appetite that the world has for the commodities that are in Africa's soil is turned into jobs for Africans and for young Africans in particular. It's improving. It's not like, no jobs are created. But because demographic growth is still so fast, then there's just not enough jobs to keep up that are created every year. We looked into the situation of youth last year in our report, and we saw that in sub-Saharan Africa, when you consider people between 15 and 24 years of age, only 7% of them have what you and I would call a decent job in the formal sector with a decent pay and a minimum level of security. Everyone else is either waiting for a job in university or at school, or with no jobs at all, or with a very bad job, sometimes unpaid.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Henri Bernard Solignac-Lecomte giving us a look at Africa's economic prospects over the next couple of years. Looking pretty good, but still a lot to do. Thanks very much for coming in to speak to us. Okay, now we're going to take a look at some other news of today. Rwanda is accusing the UN's intervention brigade in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo of entering into collaborative talks with Hutu rebels linked to the Rwandan genocide of 1994. A letter containing the claims was made public as Rwanda accused the UN's MONUSCO force and Congolese troops of deliberately bombing Rwandan territory on Monday. UN peacekeepers are in DRC to try and neutralize rebel groups that have terrorized the East for decades. Congo accuses Rwanda of supporting M23 militia who clashed with the army at Mutohu near the city of Goma for a second day on Monday. Now, around 66,000 Congolese refugees have fled into Uganda after another rebel group, the Islamist ADF, launched an attack last week on the town of Kamango. Nicolas Chemin has more.
Thousands of Congolese are crossing the border into Uganda. They are fleeing from fighting between Ugandan rebels and the Congolese army in Kamango in the north of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
We came from Congo. Thieves came and stole our possessions. We left everything behind in Congo and came here empty-handed. We are suffering a lot from a lack of food. We're sleeping outside. We don't have anything.
Living conditions are very harsh for the refugees. There is not enough food or shelter for everyone.
We don't sleep at all well here in the rain when there are showers. The children have nothing to eat.
The food shortage is so severe that every day the refugees risk crossing back over the border to return to their homes despite the threat of kidnapping and attacks by rebels. This tension and the fear it causes is making the Congolese flee across the border, leaving behind empty villages like this one near the border crossing in Nobili.
It was a general panic. Everyone fled their homes until almost the entire village was empty.
Uganda sent military reinforcements to secure the border. The Ugandan rebels of the AFD Nalu are still in the region. They are hiding out in the Rwenzori mountains. They want to put pressure on the Congolese army and increase attacks on the surrounding villages.
Now, there's been a backlash both at home and abroad over Nigeria's welcoming of Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir for a summit on HIV/AIDS. He's wanted by the International Criminal Court, accused of masterminding the genocide of 200,000 people in Darfur. Nigerian activists filed a suit with the federal court in Abuja on Monday demanding Bashir's arrest. Meanwhile, Britain's expressed its disappointment, saying that by hosting Bashir, Nigeria is sending victims a dismaying message. Now, President Hollande has formally confirmed the death of a French hostage who was kidnapped in Mali in November 2011. In March, al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb had claimed to have beheaded geologist Philippe Verdon in revenge for France's military intervention in Mali. Verdon's remains were found in the north of the country over the weekend. The Élysée says that they'll be repatriated as soon as possible. Now, amidst skepticism and criticism that Mali's impending elections are doomed to be flawed as a result of being held too early, the UN Secretary-General has urged all parties to make the best of it and respect the outcome, even if the vote is imperfect. Ban Ki-moon met with the country's interim president and François Hollande here in Paris today. The first round's due on July 28th and is seen as crucial to uniting the country after over a year of turbulence. Well, François Enquête's team in Mali has been on the campaign trail with some of the younger candidates, hoping to bring a new perspective to tackling their country's troubles.
Along the dirt roads of Bamako, after the Ramadan evening prayer, a convoy sets off in search of votes. Racine Thiam is an outsider in this race who wants change.
It's important that on July the 28th you go and vote for new political figures because the old ones have proven they can't manage this country and develop it.
It's a message that goes down well with the young, and one that Racine Thiam spends his evenings taking door to door. This is not the most efficient form of campaigning you'll find, but it's certainly cheap, and all that candidates like Racine Thiam happen to have at their disposal to take their message to the people.
While I'm here, some candidates are campaigning using private jets. They say they have millions to invest in the campaign. They buy dozens of SUVs. Clearly, they're on another planet.
It's a message also being carried to the voters by this man. At 37, Abba Maïga is the youngest candidate in the race. And he and his supporters, many of them young, also believe that the time has come for change.
Until now, Mali has only known corruption.
What future is there for the youth, for those like us who have degrees but who are unemployed?
But even getting this far has been tough for the couple at the heart of the meeting. They have something of the Obamas about them, but nothing like the means. Just getting into the race cost nearly 15,000 euros, money they've had to raise from their supporters.
At every meeting, we ask our supporters to fund the party and all its activities.
Campaigns like this one are almost diametrically opposed to some you'll see among the bigger candidates. But what they lack in resources, they more than make up for in enthusiasm and in hope.
Well, France Maghreb team in Mali will be following developments in the country in the run-up to the election. So do keep tuning in ahead of the 28th. But that does wrap it up from me for today.
All right, Georgia, thank you very much indeed. Georja Calvin-Smith there with all the news from Africa. Do stay with us here on France 24. Much more to come. Mark Owen will be with you in just a few minutes with the very latest from Cairo. And we're getting reports that security forces have fired tear gas on supporters of the ousted President Mohamed Morsi. They're still out on the streets. There have been scuffles with residents in the area, fed up with them, who've been camped out there now for 3 weeks. Mark Owen has the latest on that. Up next, stay with us.